Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached, and I'm here to review the movie They/Them. If you end up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help smaller YouTubers. Second and third will head you over to my Patreon/PayPal. And the fourth will head you over to my Discord server. And if you head over to my Patreon and PayPal, that is the two locations where you can help support me and the channel directly. And shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. So, with that out of the way, let's get into They/Them. So I saw the trailer for this movie like 3 or 4 times, or like once on YouTube, and when I heard the title, admittedly, I was very thrown off, as I thought this was going to be some sort of mockery towards the LGBT community. Like, that was going to be like the point of the movie. Quite the opposite, really, as the main character is a they/them character. And we're actually focusing on LGBTQ characters as our main cast. So, probably a little bit of a a pushy, edgy title, to be sure, in the political spectrum. I've already seen reviews, definitely, and I wouldn't be surprised if I looked a little bit harder if I were to find more criticisms of, that in particular, and focusing on the more political sides of this. But I am trying to be here to be as objective as I possibly can be. Which, admittedly, can get a little bit harder when the politics are, present still, apparently. We have not, gotten past this somehow, but here we are. Anyways, so, the movie starts off with a slasher, a typical slasher killer start. We get a killer actively killing someone at the beginning of the movie, and I've already watched some other reviews to get views on this, as they don't come back into the movie for a quite majority of it, up until the third act, where they maintain the killer maintains their goal, as I'll say now. And admittedly, it does fly in the face of the poster there. Fear doesn't discriminate. When in fact, the killer is discriminately doing the opposing discriminatory killing, I guess, is the best way I can put that. Anyway, point being, we follow a LGBTQ plus community into conversion camp location. And my first thought as I was watching this is, when does this movie even take place? My suspension of disbelief was already being placed on a big question, as they do have cell phones, and as far as I knew, I thought, or at least as I thought, conversion camps aren't a thing anymore. At least I thought they weren't anymore. And maybe I'm just not as well informed, or maybe this is more like the more fantasy or like out there premise of like they still exist just for the sake of the movie. I don't know. Point being is that it's a little hard to buy that, but whatever. For the sake of it, we'll just say, sure, it exists. This one camp still exists somewhere for the horror aspect, or the psychological horror aspect of how these individuals are treated. Though, the first day seems to be quite the opposite. They seem to get a very positive reception from the camp counselors, and it definitely puts them off guard, as they were immediately expecting immediate, like, name calling, or like, Bible focus, or, the opposing viewpoints of, like, I don't know, stuff like that, seems to be where their headspaces were. So the movie focuses on the they-them character named Jordan, and for the simplicity of my own sanity, I'll only be referring to the character as Jordan as many times as possible, as to not confuse myself, as to not mistake their sex, as they've transitioned from one to the other. So, yeah, just Jordan will suffice. So Jordan is a character who doesn't choose immediately. There are two campsites, one for males and one for females. Jordan does not, pick one immediately. They pronounce their pronouns as followed by the they-them. They are slighted towards the boys, since the transition seemed to be toward a male. And if that wouldn't have worked out, as the camp counselor is suggesting, then they would think of something else. And for that, again, the guard is put down, all that stuff. So, it seems as if everything, at least at day one, seems to be a relative peace. But that quickly shatters away as we continue to follow primarily these characters dealing with the camp counselors turning on a dime, very not subtly, whether that be on one-on-one meetings, or using more gendered, aspects to what we normalized back in the day, of like what people used to think of what a female ought to do and what a male ought to do. Primarily, that happens a bit significantly, I would say, in the middle-ish part of the movie, where the men are put to the guns, and the women are left to the cooking and the cleaning. So, very, I'm going to use the word stereotypical, gender roles here. Very outdated way of thinking of how, there are a lot more gender-neutral things that seem to coalesce as time seems to go by. It seems as if that seems to be the case that I see more often. That might be based on where I live, probably. But yeah, so there's that. So they're pushed and pulled in all of these negative directions again, and one of the students is put in the actual, like, old school, like, electroshock therapy after he decides to sleep with or have sexual advantages with one of the other males in a same-sex scene. And it turns out that this one of them, the smaller individual of the two, was in on it. They were a part of the camp. I'm not sure how they set that up at all. So a bit odd that that's how they would function that, or figure out that one of the students was, I don't know. It's very bizarre that they have it be that way. we have on the female side, we have this one woman, the psychologist woman, talking to one of them, downplaying each of them as they see. We see them communicate with Jordan, primarily focusing on that, our main character, really emphasizing the whole you chose to be a they, and using, all this other pretext to pretty much destroy their, their mental strength, to dwindle that down to literally nothing, in which probably the suicide rate, let's just say, that's probably one of the reasons it would actually go up, not down. Let's not pretend. I'm not gonna fight against what suicide prevention sites have cited, so, even though I'm not a professional in that regard, but nonetheless, as they are being geared toward this downward spiral, each of them, or most of them, one scene in particular will often hit at least one of the students in one way or another. And as we progress into the third and final statement of the killer makes their return, or, makes more of a presence as they continue to kill off the counselors, but seem to not inherently kill any of the students there. So it becomes pretty obvious once the first kill is made what the killer's intent is to kill the counselors. And that remains pretty consistent, that does remain consistent throughout up to the final kill, in which Jordan is in the middle of as everything is beginning to unravel. So we are at this place in time where we have the main camp counselor, and we have Jordan, who has been guiding everyone else out of a more youthful age, having someone else guide them out. So, safety precautions and all that good stuff. So they get out of there. Only a handful of, remaining campers remain. Jordan being among them, and decides to stick it out for, I forget Jordan's reasoning specifically, but point being is that Jordan ends up in a situation where Jordan is in a cabin, and the camp leader is just finding out that this other attack happened, and he gets attacked himself, and the killer unmasked, officially revealing, I believe it was herself. I forget if this individual switched as well, sexes, that is. So I do apologize if that was out of line. But anyway, point being is that this individual was points out that, I'm gonna kill all of them, the camp counselors, for treating us this way. So, I've seen some criticism have said that this is sort of like a cop-out, or some sort of a sort of mushy middle ground, safe way of handling this type of movie, and I'm actually gonna disagree here. I think that this is kinda-ish close to a realistic scenario-ish. I do think that it could have been handled. I do agree that it could have been handled a bit better, sure. And I think one of the things that probably would have help significantly is having a bigger camp, probably more generic characters, camp counselors to be specific, just sort of generally, like, have them taking care of general other students so that the killer could be more active throughout the movie. I feel like that could have easily been the easy solution to that individual problem to, help alleviate the lacking of the slasher element in this movie. But then again, there's the actual amount of people and how much that would additionally cost, so you have to play devil's advocate a little bit there, but I don't know. I think they could have dealt with at least a little, add like 3 more camp counselors at the very most, and have them like get picked off at different sections of the movie. I don't know. Something along those lines. Anyway, point being is that I disagree with the assessment of it being unnecessary to the film. I disagree. I think that's actually a quite fascinating approach to this movie, and since it had begun with that, initial kill, which a slasher film typically tends to do anyways, outside of that one kill, it seems to, again, prioritize this killer as one that is focused on a specific goal. And it definitely, she definitely reaches out to Jordan saying, like, they mistreated us, they did all these bad things, so the consequence should be death instead of justice. And I actually like that. I think that that's a interesting middle ground that isn't really... I can't remember, like, the last time where it was like... You don't often get a middle ground answer to these sorts of things, typically speaking. And when they do, don't get me wrong, they can still be executed poorly. But I think that this movie handles it okay-ish. Again. And I would say that the reason why I think that if they just added the few more kills, again, that's just for the satisfaction of it being a slasher film. Outside of that, it does create an interesting line of, well, obviously the consequences should be something, but what are the consequences? And, how do you even unfold if killing wasn't the outcome? If you were to unravel this sort of thing and have, the police show up, how would you achieve that in a way that would, put this place, would end this place, essentially? Right, you would need the hard proof. You would probably need the pictures or something and need to, run all the way to, like, a location or something and get your phone, and there would be a whole different sequence of events that would need to occur for you to get that specific result, and you would have to convince the police, like hey, there's this place that's doing this stuff, and it's really messed up. You arrested for general abuse, since I'm not going to say child abuse, since even though I think some of the campers appear to be younger-ish, like the main characters seem to be of a higher age range here, like out of college, perhaps. Again, those details seem to be pretty up in the air, as well as like when this movie is supposed to take place. I think fleshing out even those details, honing it in on its realism, I think, with those details, I think would have actually added even more to the film's credential of it honing in on that particular message of, you know, it's going to be hard to get to the police, you know, find that evidence once you realize what's actually going on. So it's not going to be a instant fix, right? You have to go through that process of finding out, getting out, going to the police, making sure that they believe you, probably bringing the images with you, if that's the, best method of you being able to achieve that, and then getting them all the way back and dealing with the process. But, this, I feel like, is a very, it's suggesting that, again, there is a middle ground, and it's an uncomfortable middle ground, because it's almost suggesting, like, yeah, killing them's the easy answer. It really is. Like, stab, done, end of the day, right? And, that is against them doing all of this torturous stuff for X amount of time, and, dehumanizing you in other ways. So mental stuff and physical when it comes to the actual electrical, shockings. And it did appear as if, it did appear when they found the images that the kids that they did this to were even younger in that sequence. I think it would have been way more effective, again, if you had a more structured camp site as well. Have it be actually set by the age limits. Like, actually really plan this out. Really, have, again, the more camp counselors dedicated to each set of, each group of, like, within an age range that have, like, figured out that, either they're gay or lesbian or bi or any other sexuality in between. So, yeah. Do it that way. Like, make the scale bigger, but keep it grounded within that same context of, one individual from before, going through that process and then thinking that the best result is to go to the other extreme. So, I think a bigger scale would have fixed the majority of the actual legitimate problems of this movie. In pretty much every, facet that you can put in that. But it is much more condensed, it is much more small, and as a consequence, again, you lose out on the slasher element to a significant degree. The characters do get a little bit more work. That's the upside to it. You have those little individual scenes, and you get to see each of character break down at a different point. So that's the upside of it. So there's a little bit of a teeter-totter in terms of where they could have taken this movie in terms of its execution. In terms of a final score, I feel like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 is probably where I'm going to land as an objective score. And that is primarily because of the amount of improvements that you could have made, where, these characters are pretty, I wouldn't, typically, in horror movies, the current ones, most of the characters are the unlikable characters, and that is not the case here. It's the camp counselors that are the unlikable ones. once you start to unravel, you know, what their true intent is after day one. So yeah, once that is the case, your mindset goes, "Oh, that's an interesting trick you did there." Because again, typically in a horror movie, all the characters are unlikable, so you're like, "Yeah, let the killer kill him." And that is definitely a mindset that is both. It's a double-edged sword. It always has been. That I don't think a lot of people recognize. On one end of that blade is the lack of, well, character, and the other end of the blade is, well, how messed up are you on the head? Wanting people to die. Like that. Those are the two ends of the blade. At the end of the day. So, a little bit behind the scenes for those who are not in the know of what I typically mean by that, so there you go. Anyways, so yeah, definitely a 5 or 6, somewhere in there, sort of score, movie. I feel like this movie will definitely resonate higher for you if you're within the community, which I guess I'm technically a part of, if you know me. But, whatevs. Sort of still an in-between movie. And I think that's, meh. Typically, is usually where I put the 5 out of 10. Or 6 out of 10 is usually like, it has more flaws than... It has a lot more good than negative, but the negatives are very noticeable, which is why I'm fluctuating between the 6. Anyways, that is my review of They/Them. And if you ended up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. That'd be great. Get their own tab. It'll be fantastic for them to actually be noticed on YouTube for once. You can also check out my Patreon/PayPal, which will be the 2nd and 3rd, which will help support me directly and help support the channel directly. And the 4th to my Discord server, where you can meet other YouTubers and collab or just talk about, the structure of YouTube, any of that good stuff. And yeah, with all that out of the way, until next time everyone, bye-bye.